Hey, it's JD here, and seeing that lovely graphic to start, I got to tell you, I got to update it because it's new now. We have a new graphic for Sunday Evening Jam. I'm JD, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend Sara J. How are you doing, Sara?
I am so fantastic
This is good to
because
hear.
we had the best night ever last night.
It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
It was a lot of fun.
Well, one of our guests that's joining us today was in on the fun with us, and that is Jeff Tucker. We'll be joining him and Andrew Schmidt just shortly. They're both raring to go to talk about tribute bands and the evening that we had last night. And, you know, we're going to get right into it. So let's introduce these guys, and I'll catch you up on some stuff. How's it going, Andrew? How's it going, Jeff?
Hey, guys.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
Oh, my gosh. I get to see everybody, but this is like my super tired face. So sorry, everybody.
We got to see your rocker chick last night, so that was cool.
Totally. Now it's the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm wearing my slippers and my pajama pants. So it's
You're
like
in recovery
of last night.
But are they sparkly slippers?
No, they're just like the solid black.
Okay. All right.
Excellent. So I want to do some follow-up on news that we talked about last week. The first bit of news I want to mention is, just briefly, I want to talk about Podlist 6. The Podlists have been coming out weekly right now, just to remind you of the talent that is out there. There are some really talented listeners, and it thrills me that they want to contribute their work to these Podlists. And I think we've got 8 submissions right now. April 30th is your deadline. Get cracking, get those songs in. We want to hear them. We want you to share them. So that's news item number 1. News item number 2 is the mishmash that we talked about last week, and we'll give it a quick listen and backgrounder before I get into the update I have for you. Jeff Tucker, if you've been paying attention to the Sunday Night Jams, 3 weeks ago posited a theory about the song from Paul's first record, which I think is saying no. What was it called again now? Can't
wait anymore.
Can't wait anymore. Thank you. And use it up.
Use it.
And so then we talked about it the next week. And last week I decided to put the songs back to back, and I played them for you to just further Jeff's point that this is what it is. And I'll play it for you again right now. So if you're listening carefully, in the left channel is Paul's solo record, and then the right channel is Use It Up. And I staggered them just by like maybe a quarter of a second so that you could hear it follow up. I was in contact with Paul Langlois earlier this week, and I asked him, what the deal is with this comparison. And I made mention of Jeff. I said that, one of our astute listeners picked this up, and I'm just curious if there was any if there was any forethought into this. And as most artists want to do, I don't think they listen to a lot of their previous work very often. And what he said was it was completely unrelated. It was completely accidental, and he had never noticed it before. So wow. I didn't send him the clip, but I think that I think if I were to send him the clip, he'd be relatively surprised by how close it is. Maybe. So that's my little update on that.
Even cooler because it's like a subconscious thing that it just like came out of him from somewhere in here. and
Yeah.
came out, and I think that makes it really neat.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really think so. So that's some Paul news. The other Paul news is earlier this week, they must be getting ready to hit the road again because he has put out his annual call for Where Do You Want Me to Play? And Andrew, I'm sure you submitted Florida, and I'm sure Jeff,
I did.
You submitted east of Bowmanville, northeast of Bowmanville. I forget the name of it right now. It starts with an S.
Ends with an S. Rose Neath.
Oh, okay. Rose Neath.
Well, doesn't end with an S, but sound if you have a list.
Sure. And I used to. So there's that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. I'd love to see him come to the city. I'd love to see him play here at a nice venue. That would be a lot of fun. But I would travel to see him as well because I think they're really good. And I saw Sinclair's band live, and it was wonderful as well. Yeah, good, really good stuff. We've got 2 votes for Florida. From the chat comes Soto McBacney. I can't pronounce that, but 2 votes for Florida. Will never happen, but it could be cool. If you are in the chat, tell us where you're from and if you'd like to see Paul there, or if you have any comments for Jeff or Andrew or Sara J. That would be that would be great. I just noticed what you said there. And this is Tampa. Okay, perfect. South Tampa. Okay, get it. Okay.
There'll be 2 of us there then. That'll be perfect.
Well, there you go.
There you go. That's perfect. I love it.
I saw a hip tribute band a couple weeks ago, and we'll segue into our hip tribute band conversation. I saw a hip tribute band just a couple weeks ago, and there was a big ice storm going on, and the ice storm was terrible, and it really impacted their crowd. And I was disappointed for them because they're called From the Hip, and they did a fantastic job. But it was disappointing that there were only just a couple people out to see them on this terrible night. This is markedly different from what we experienced last night when Jeff Tucker, Sara J, and myself all got together and went to see the Strictly Hip at the fucking Horseshoe, the legendary Horseshoe Tavern. I think we were all surprised when we walked up and there was a motherfucking line, probably 150 deep, like at least 150, 200 deep. And when we walked in, this band had, I don't know, in the stage area, 300 people in total. I would guess. I'm really bad with crowd sizes.
There was a lot of people there.
There really was, right?
Yeah.
A lot of heat, a lot of good energy.
For sure, though, that was the thing, though, is the energy in that room was just, it was just so cool. It was really special. The energy in the room was a lot of fun.
I'm glad that got to be your first tribute show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think the Horseshoe brought something out of people a little bit. Like it tends to sort of level up everyone's game kind of thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. It makes total sense.
I was actually really surprised, like you talked about the crowd. I was not expecting that. I was expecting, a mediocre sized crowd, but that place was packed. And we talked about it last night, the demographic of the crowd, the age demographic of the crowd. I thought it was going to be a bunch of geezers like Jamie and I. I didn't expect there to be a lot of young people like Sarah or even younger.
There were a lot of like really young people there for sure.
And to go back to the energy, to blend that into it, like at what was it, like third or fourth song in, the entire crowd was belting out the lyrics, like everybody, and the lead singer stopped singing, and it was just, I was impressed. Like I just wasn't expecting that. So it was fantastic. It was the first time I had seen the Strictly Hip as well. Now, I don't mind the cover bands, but Sarah, I don't know, were you converted last night?
I don't think that I was converted, but it's funny because I went up and talked to Jeremy, the lead singer, very briefly after the show and introduced myself and everything. And I told him, I said, I have a very strong opinion about tribute bands. And he chuckled and said, so do I. And I said, well, I'm blown away, and this was a phenomenal evening, and you guys did a wonderful job. And he was like, well, thank you very much. So it was funny that he had, echoed my sentiment about tribute bands, but they really impressed me. And I don't know if I said it to you or if I said it to Darren, but it was like they had, I feel like 5 to 10 seconds for me where it was just like make or break. And we walked in and they were already started playing. And I was like, all right, this is okay. This is good. And it was worth the wait. If I was going to see him for the first time, I think that I'm really grateful, actually, that the other times didn't pan out, because last night was just really special for a lot of reasons. And I think that's what made it great too. So it's worth the wait. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because like I was worried hearing your comments about going into it. I'm like, I've seen the Strictly Hip so many times too. I just flew up a couple months ago and caught a show, and they're not putting on like a mime act. They're actually just playing the music, which I appreciate. It's not the same, but it's what you can get. So it's that live energy for me. I've said that before, and it's just different than putting an album on.
Yeah, I think so. It's like non-alcoholic beer. It satisfies the need. You get the taste, you get the enjoyment, but there's just something missing, and you can't quite put your finger on it. And then suddenly it smacks you in the face, and it's like it's the goddamn band that's missing. But these guys are fucking great musicians in the Strictly Hip.
That's what I said last night too, was their segue in New Orleans and in and out of Cinnamon Girl. And I was especially interested to see how they were going to come from, it was 100th Meridian. I'm sorry. How they were going to come from Cinnamon Girl back into 100th Meridian. I was really curious how they were going to do it, and they did it really, really well. And in that moment for me, it was like, all right, these guys are just really great musicians.
So I have a question for you on that then. Do you think it resembles more of the live shows? You've been listening to a ton of live shows, or do you think it resembles more of them playing song choices from albums?
I don't know. That's an interesting question.
Because I know you've been going hard on those.
Yeah. I don't know. It was interesting because that was one of the things that really piqued my interest going into it, was like, how was Jeremy going to do certain aspects of the live show? Like, were we just going to kind of get like a copy, or was he just going to kind of do certain things? So that was something that was really interesting to me. But I liked how they had put specifically like Cinnamon Girl in there. So it kind of was like an homage to what the band used to do live, but really put their own, just like the whole concept, they pay homage to it, but then there's their own personality to it. You're following the formula, but you're putting your own little extra spice into the dish, is how I feel. And so I think that would be my answer to that.
Solid. Mr. Tucker, any highlights for you last evening from the set?
I was standing beside Sarah when they did 100th Meridian, and I thought that was pretty cool as well, that they broke into Cinnamon Girl. I thought that was, I wasn't expecting it, because they had done, I think it was New Orleans is Sinking earlier, which was my other highlight I was going to mention. But I actually thought, when it fired up, the drummer was hitting so hard, my eardrum was popping every time he was hitting. And I remember thinking, I didn't notice him hitting this hard for the first couple songs. And so I thought something was coming in that song, and I figured that he was going to use that to do a rant, much like Gord would do, but he didn't. What it ended up being was a drummer solo, and it was an awesome drummer solo. He did a wicked solo, and I think was hitting even harder when I got to his solo part. But those were a couple standouts for me that I really enjoyed. Was New Orleans' Sink In, and then 100th Meridian when they did a little Cinnamon Girl. And of course, I didn't stick around to see the end, so there could have been a couple other. Their guitarist as well on the far stage right, who would play, I guess, Bobby Baker's part. I think there was a bit there where he was doing some slide and a bit of a solo, and I just can't remember which song, but it was pretty phenomenal as well. And to echo what Sarah said, they were great musicians. Like it was pretty damn good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was not expecting to be that entertained and enjoy the music as much. And I think when we first walked in, we kind of all got separated. So I was standing with Sarah for a bit, and I remember standing there, and I think it's just maybe just the way I perceive things, like the way my senses take it in. But I think I was more focused on the visual of the people I was looking at, because when you actually go to see the Hip live, they're just kind of mesmerizing, especially Gord. So you're looking for that visual, vortex to draw you in, which all you kind of get is, but that's not the Hip. And then after a couple songs in, my senses went more to my hearing, and I started listening to the music and the singing, and that's when I think my head started bobbing, and I was like, yeah, okay. And then and that's I think when a lot of the crowd energy started to pick up as well, and then it was purely on the music from that point on, which was phenomenal.
I think what I really loved is how they set the stage for the music. They were like, we're from Buffalo, you're from Canada, there's people here from other places, and we're all here for one reason, and that's the music of the Tragically Hip, and we're just delighted to share that with you. And it's like, yeah, that's what it fucking should be, man. That's dynamite. And I think right there, you get buy-in from the crowd. If they are skeptical, that, hey, these guys are just trying to share. They love the band as much as we do. They're not trying to besmirch them in any meaningful way or any unmeaningful way. It's just that's how it works. So there's that. Andrew, have you seen other Hip cover bands or Hip tribute bands, or is it just strictly Hip for you as well?
None of the big name ones. Again, I've been out of town for like 10 years, so I'll catch a strictly Hip show when I'm back in town once in a while. But it's nice to hear all that, because it seems like a lot of these cover bands popped up after the last tour, and it seems more mimicky than actual playing the music. I love everything you said. They've been playing for 20 years. I've seen them in bars and backyards, and it's awesome how huge they are now. But nothing recent really piqued my interest.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, there are a lot of them right now. We've got one on we've got two actually right now in our chat. We've got a band called 50 Mission, who, if you follow along the podcast, they played our fundraiser for Getting Hip to the Hip. And we've got our friend Craig from Gift Shop, and he is referring to From the Hip and the Ice Storm. And no, they did not play something on, I don't think.
That's what I meant to look and see, and I didn't do. I've been on I changed my phone screensaver to the photo that Darren posted yesterday, because it makes my heart so happy.
Tell everybody about the photo.
Oh, well, where did he posted it? Like online when he posted the new shows. So there's new live shows, and there's a new Buffalo show for me to listen to, and a Syracuse show. So I'm excited about that, to dive into that this week. But he posted this photo of Gord with a Buffalo Sabres jersey on, and I was like nerding out about it. And then when we were at dinner last night, he was like, oh, I posted that for you. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So it's my new phone screensaver.
Gord with this lovely tally there.
Yeah. So it's like, it's hitting all the things. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, they did not post last night's set list yet.
That was actually cool that Darren was there, JD. I didn't see him on the email list, so I wasn't expecting. And I think I was the second one to walk into the
me
back
last
room.
minute, and he was like, "Where are you guys meeting up before the show?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're coming tonight too?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I had no idea."
Yeah, and that's Darren
Yeah, I'm starting
from.
to think there's like not a concert he misses.
Oh my God, he's seen a lot of shows.
Oh my god, we were
Yeah.
nerding out so hard. I have a list of books from last night because he just kept suggesting all these different books and things. And so I have a list in my phone of books, and you know that I'm reading them. And we were just talking about all the things. And he actually did mention a couple other tribute bands, like for Genesis, and there was another one that he had mentioned. And so it was really interesting to get his take on some other bands, tribute bands that would be worth my time to check out. So
Well,
we'll see.
he's a legit music lover and encyclopedia. And this is
Oh my
Darren
God.
from the Hip Archive that we're talking about.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Darren. And I actually didn't clarify with him last night. Do you say it cap or cape or cape? Did anyone
Cap.
get that? It's cap. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Super guy.
So fun.
Every time he made a music reference, I'd say, pardon? And he said, do you know? And he'd say the name of the band. I'm like, no, I don't. That happened about 6 or 7 times. No, I don't.
No.
Well, and because he's been seeing music for so long, like we would be outside and he would tell me about like, oh, I saw this band at this little tiny ass bar here, and then they played with these people, and then they played with these, and he'd be like connecting this whole thing with this
it's like that meme
history of bands, and just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Back when you could go to a show for $10, it was easier to do that.
Yeah, literally.
Well, I'll tell you what. This is my theory. The $20 to $30 concert ticket is now virtually owned by tribute bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like if you want to see even an indie band at this point, you're paying $40 usually. You know, like it's
and at least at the minimum $40.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying for indie band.
Yeah.
But definitely mainstream bands, it's $100 to get in now. That's just what it is. Yeah. So hey.
The other day I was looking at a bunch of my old hip ticket stubs, and it blew me away how inexpensive it was. The first Hip show that I went to in '92 was $19.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah, it was.
And for perspective, I mean, this is 30 years later, but for perspective, last night's concert was 30. You know, 30 Canadian dollars, and it's 27, but still about $30. And you know, just 30 years ago. Jesus Christ, Jamie, that's a long time ago. Our coins were made of rock back then, weren't they, Jeff?
Listen, in my mind, when somebody says 30 years ago, I think it's the 70s. I don't know what to say. Like that's just what I think. So
I go vintage shopping, and like vintage right now is like late 90s. And it's like, all I want is a wide collar shirt. That's
you could probably shop it. Yeah, you could shop in my closet probably.
Well, I got a bunch of questions that I have to find right now because they're about tribute bands, and they're about bands that we saw last night, and I want to keep us on theme. So I'm going to just pull up these questions really quickly. As I'm vamping here. While I'm vamping, I just really want to thank everybody for, our panelists today for being part of membership, and our guests watching on the live stream. This is pretty decent. We enjoy doing this every week, and we enjoy that you come out and participate. So. Fucking participate, man.
And it's fun. Like last night was fun. It was really great to meet everybody and spend that time together. And I would love to make that, a semi-regular thing if we could, and
Oh,
just
that would be fun.
hang out. And it took me less than 2 hours to get home. So
Oh, that's good.
it was like an hour and 45 minutes to get home.
Nice.
So that was not bad at all. And I think it would be a lot of fun. And I mean, we're all going to hang out in October. So
Yes.
Yes.
come and buy tickets and come and hang out in October. That's going to be
Jeff
fun.
has already scored his tickets. We've got tickets. Matt from Portsmouth has bought a ticket coming all the way from Portsmouth, UK. So that's pretty exciting. We've got a couple coming from Oregon. Those are the ones that I can think of right now. So it should be a good show. We're going to, in the next few weeks, we should have some more news about the show to share with you. But I want to ask you guys a couple questions about tribute bands in general. But specifically with hip tribute bands. My limited experience, I've seen like 5. But there's dozens at this point. So what makes a good tribute band, in your opinion? Sarah, now that you what has kept you away up until this point? I know what brought you there last night. It was the engagement and it was the people. It wasn't necessarily, I'm going to see a tribute band, right?
For sure. I think for me, a lot of it, honestly, was my own music snobbery. Sure. I'm not sure the right way to position that word in there, but I think a lot of it had to do with it was just me having such a just a picky opinion about it. Even when I would go to see bands and they would pick like a song and they would cover one song in their set. And even then I would be really picky about it because I just think, it can be difficult to cover other people's songs. And sometimes I think people, when they play live music, just cover songs because they're on the stage and they have an instrument and they want to play it instead of, really honoring the art and the artist and the music. And so I think a lot of it has to do with that. Is I think if you are going to do it, I think you have to do it in a way that really respects the art and the artist and the music. And so I think that for me is just like, I want to make sure that that's happening. So, and last night I really felt that. And I think being in the room and having that environment and seeing that everybody is just there to keep the music alive. And it was just really special to see that. And I think that that's what, really did it for me last night, was just really going in with an open mind too. It's like, I'm going in, I'm going to be really open-minded and, really give them a chance. And I'm glad I did. But I can't say that I'm like totally on the board now. I mean, Darren, it did talk about the one Genesis tribute band that I will check out. Because he just spoke so highly of them. And that was something I wanted to say too. We were talking about last night with like Genesis, and specifically like Peter Gabriel era Genesis, if anybody knows anything about that era of music, very theatrical. And so this band does that. They do the costumes, they do the whole part of it. But with Genesis, that's necessary because that's part of the albums from that era. It's part of the whole story. It's the part of the whole thing for them. And we talked about last night how some of the hip tribute bands, they'll dress just like band members and they'll do whatever. And for me, I don't feel like with the hip that's necessary. You don't need to do that, where it's just more about the music than trying to emulate any of the band members, because that's not necessary in putting the music out there. And so that's like how the difference we were talking about last night with the two types of bands.
I think one of the things that makes it interesting with the Tragically Hip is that you've got such an iconic frontman. Yeah. And so there are a lot of people that are probably, when they are doing their consideration for, you know, forming a Tragically Hip tribute band, they want to pay homage to that piece as well. But that's where it does sometimes become a little uncanny, right? It becomes, you know, you see that Jaws shirt and you're sort of like, okay, that's weird. That feels almost exploitive in a strange way.
Yeah, and it
I'm
feels
not
real
sure if anyone
kitschy,
in
and
the
like
chat
that for
agrees,
me
but
is what turns it off. For me is like that kind of stuff. It's just like I
yeah.
feel like you can't lose your identity in it. I feel is, you know, you're paying homage to it,
But
but still keeping your identity.
there's a market for that though too.
Sure.
It's not for me, but there is kind of a market for that too, because like you think about like a Kiss cover band. If you go to see a Kiss cover band and they're not dressed up like Kiss, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
and there
that's a good point.
is some of that for like acts that don't tour or don't play. But I don't know. I'm with you. I feel kind of weird about it with the Hip too. It just doesn't feel right to me. Maybe it's a too soon thing, but we're kind of using tribute band and cover band interchangeably, but are they different? Like,
I was thinking about this last night when we were using the words interchangeably, and we were obviously discussing the evening as it was unfolding, and that thought had crossed my mind as well. Is like, is it the same by definition? Is that an interchangeable? Is that correct? I don't know.
I feel like most people in the actual band would refer to themselves as a tribute band. Like that would be the referral for themselves, because one of our chatters mentioned earlier that I didn't throw the chat up there, but they were talking about. Oh, actually, I did throw it up there. You know, the bands aren't around or they're too expensive to see, so it does keep you close, you know, to the music, and that is the very definition of like a tribute. Yeah. So I think it's become the more respectful way, because like Andrew said, there's a market for this, and there are a lot of people paying, like we said, $20 to $30 to go out and see tribute bands. Where I think it gets weird is when the band still exists. That's sort of strange.
That's how I always felt too. For me, that was definitely a thing, and it still is for me. Is like, for me, I'm not gonna go see like a Dave Matthews tribute band because like Dave Matthews is still touring, and so it's just, that's kind of weird for me to go and see a tribute band for a band that's still touring.
Yeah.
Well, the funny part about it too is the Hip kind of started out as a cover band. They were playing the Stones in the beginning at the bars.
Sure.
They say that all the time. We started out as a cover band. We played the Stones. Like, so it's weird that they kind of started that way and developed their own thing out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting.
Kirk brings up an interesting point again from the Daryl's band here. What if those bands don't get to the cities that the tributes play? And that's often the case. You know, like if you live in this area, they play Toronto, but then they don't play another city, you know, until Ottawa. And that's like 6 hours away. And there's lots of cities in between. And how do you get your rock on, you know? So...
Well, that kind of goes along with what I was going to say, too, is like, it's interesting that like the Strictly Hip's band, they just did their 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
And so they've been playing for 30 years and the band just celebrated their 40th anniversary. So it's interesting that there's all these tribute bands that were touring and gaining their own fan base, you know, in congruency of the band releasing music and touring themselves.
I can remember when the Hip were rocking and rolling. The area that I'm from, Road Apples, was probably the most popular. We called them a cover band back then, not a tribute band.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, you know, so, but they were fantastic. And I think, JD, you posed the question, what makes a cover band good? 100 people will give you 100 different answers. But I think first and foremost, the music's got to be good. They've got to be good musicians, and you've got to have a competent singer. But then I think the X factor is that they have to be able to create an experience for the audience. And if they can create an experience where they build energy and they get the crowd engaged, then I think mission accomplished. It's a success. But again, people go to bands and they don't like the bands. It could be a professional band that sells millions of records, or it could be a cover band or a tribute band. And you don't know if that band's for you unless you go and see them and make a decision. But then the band creates a following. So I think any tribute band who has created a following, I think has the credentials of being a good tribute band. And last night, with the Strictly Hip, again, the musicians were great. Their singer was fantastic. And I thought they did a great job of creating pretty good experience. And looking around the room, I think the mission was accomplished last night there as well.
Agree.
I was talking to somebody who was there last night via chat today, who was 70 years old, and they were there. So what a wide swath. We saw some young people, but we saw some older people as well. What a swath. What a great thing this music does.
Yeah.
It keeps that community alive, and it's not unlike what you are doing and what this is doing. And it's the same kind of thing, is still keeping that community together and keeping the people connected, but that's just their way of doing it, is singing the music.
Exactly.
and having that piece of it.
Because how many people were there that weren't huge Hip fans? They just went with their friend, or they went with their sister, and so they might get turned on to something like that. My son's 10, and we went to a Hip show up at, I think it was Babeville in Buffalo a couple months ago. Like, just the amount and swath of people there, it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting subject for sure. We could probably talk about it more. We've got a comment from the chat indicating, and I remember this chapter, which is funny because I don't normally remember things, but Michael Barkley's book has the whole chapter on tribute bands. And he, I really wish when we had him on the show, we could have put the screws to him and got him to name the ones that he liked the best. And he doesn't get into that in a granular way in the book, but there's allusions that are made, I think. So, but that's something for sure. Anything else on tribute bands in general? Yeah. Listen to it. It's Strombo. Strombo does the reading of that book.
Oh yeah.
So
all right. I'll listen to the audiobook because I've already read it, so I'll listen to it again this time. So
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Well, that's what we've got for you this week, folks. Hope you enjoyed yourself. We've got a rich, Tragically Hip community that is burgeoning. It's springtime in Tirana, so we are going to water this motherfucking plant, and we're going to grow it big and strong right up through October 4th, when we all get together and dance like a bunch of idiots. So there's that. Andrew, Jeff, Sara J, thanks so much for coming out again this week. Next week we'll be back. We don't have a theme at the moment, but I've got a couple ideas. If you've got a theme idea, send me an email, tthtop40@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. So there's that. Thanks for stopping by. Pick up your shit.